This is going to be an explosive episode of On VJ's playlist, or at least I hope so, because we have Pratika and she dons multiple hats. Like, I need to sit down with her someday and understand how she does all of this. She's a rapper, she's a voiceover artist. She, what are you not? Like, you just quickly take us through everything that you do, Pratika, in a day. And also, while you share that, please let us know how you do all of it. But welcome, Pratika Prabhune, who's MC Pep, who's also Pratika. Like you might as well also give us your monikers, man. Come on.
Yeah, okay. What's up, everyone? And thank you for tuning in to this session with VJ, aka Vijay Lakshmi. I am a singer, a rapper, a songwriter, a sometimes only lyricist, a composer. I know all these terms are kind of intertwined because of how there's a whole confusion of being separately a lyricist or being separately a composer or an arranger and the whole thing of the Indian music industry. But I am all of those things and those things separately as well. I kind of changed my life's trajectory to just doing and making music earlier this year in March. But before that, I used to do anything and everything related to events. Um, I have worked in social media and digital marketing, in publicity, in stage management, FOH management, uh, event management completely, artist programming, artist bookings, logistics. It's like I'm naming everything that goes into making a live event. But yeah, I've done all of these things with companies like Bajao, 4x4 experiences, a very little bit with Azadi Records, mostly on the digital marketing side, and with Ticket Ferry. And over the years, I started off basically volunteering at a lot of music festivals when I just passed school, I think. When I was like 15, 16, I started just going to festivals. I don't think it was even legal to enter, but like looking at me, it's not like people could tell that I'm young or something. But yeah, I started volunteering at festivals. Some of the first few festivals I worked on were Great Indian Rock, which used to happen. GIR is what people know it as. Used to happen way back in the early 2000s until like 2011, 12, like in its full form. And yeah, I think one of my first cool duties was being the green room manager for this Swedish heavy metal giants called Meshuggah. And and there were other acts at that show like Tesseract and Enslaved, and it was a great first experience. I did a few other smaller editions of GIR which were only Indian band based or had bands like Binia Reach and stuff way back. But yeah, over the years, I think it's been, if you go to see when I was 15 and now the fact that I'm 30 and I'll be like 31 in like a couple of weeks, I've been doing this for 15 years. So it has been a long time. I got a job to be just an events executive at a time where jobs for events executives didn't exist, like Bajao and a few other companies, maybe who were already doing events on large scale at that time, had these as job designations, but it wasn't common to be hired as an events executive in 2013 or 14. So it's been a fun long run, and I've just taken all of those experiences and learnings that I have invested so much time in the earlier parts of my life to kind of put it into the music and the releases that I do today. And in music, it's actually really nice because a lot of it picked up for me from the lockdown because I was one of the few female vocalists in Bombay who had a mic at home. So they were like, oh, wow, and you rap and you can sing. So I got a couple of very nice projects earlier that time. Like I've done very sparsely, done like a couple of ads in the past where I was just doing singy things just in the background. But here I was like writing lyrics for Netflix. I was doing things like that. It became a whole creative explosion for me. And since then, I have been regularly, like almost every week, I do ad work, a lot of advertisements, singing, rapping, and voiceovers, lyrics. Um, I have also been doing a few web series. Like I recently just got it's I'm like fresh from
Congratulations for
Khalbali
Khalbali
Records.
Report. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I officially wrote a song for where I wasn't singing the song myself. And I actually produced it also. Like a lot of the chords and everything are still like used along with Lambo. So that was a very fresh experience for me. I've always wanted to also get a little more into production. So that's something I'm
And
dipping
you
my hands
have
in. But
closely worked with Prabdeep and EPR here on their respective work when you were with Azadi Records, if I'm not
with
wrong.
Azadi, yes, Prabdeep, I have worked with closely. EPR is a very old friend because he used to play in this band called Underground Authority. And this
Yeah.
is at a time where I also used to be in a band formerly, used to be known as Cooperative Cemetery, and then later became Chronic Phobia. It was a modern metal kind of band when fewer modern metal bands existed. So, yeah, I knew a lot of people in that show from like different places, like even Orithro, I had met him as an actor on a different set. And
Mm.
yeah, so I've done a bit of the web series things. Kalkut with Vijay Varma.
Yeah.
There's one song in that called Tezab, which also features Ishita Chakravarti and Jyoti Nuran.
Yeah.
So Raghav Arjun did that one. I've done a song called Bombay for Showtime, which is on Hotstar. That was with Anand Bhaskar.
Which is a great
And
intro to the lead character actually played by Mahima Makwana. So I mean you
yeah,
really capture the spirit of I should not say the spirit because then that risks me at normalizing hustle, but no, but just the fact
yeah,
that it captures the essence of the whole bhag dod as we call it of
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
city. So I think that was a good song actually. I think the minute I heard that song and the backdrop, I'm like, sounds like Pratika. And then I saw the credits. I was like, yeah, of course, Anand
And I was
Bhaskar.
like,
It
yeah,
had
and
to
it
be,
also really sounds like Bombay. It sounds
yeah,
really
it
like
sounds like
Bombay. Like
Bombay.
I was
True.
thinking three, four things in my mind. I was like street slang, and at the same time, like a very unknowing influence in this whole thing was Devil. Like it's that very, very like mixing it with a little bit of humor, but just keeping it kind of simple, but still like with that kind of impact. So it was fun. I felt like a female Devil for 2 minutes.
I have to
But
ask
yeah.
you this. Is it safe to say then, I mean, clearly now our viewers have gotten like a huge CV kind of a, insight about who, Pratika Prabhune really is. But is it safe to say, Pratika, that that also makes you as someone who really has an insider's account about how A, the music industry functions, and B, also about how the entertainment event industry in a city like Bombay largely performs?
Yeah, it kind of does because over the years, I think I've worked in many capacities which have involved brands and companies. And it's just getting to like the final product or the final display of the show. There are a lot of nuances that I've kind of got used to just in the way that things are presented and pitched, the way people are coordinated with, and the way there is inclusivity or therefore lack of it in the industry in general. Um, it's been a few years of knowing kind of how that runs. It also kind of comes from visiting conferences here and there to just get like statistical industry updates. Places like All About Music where you just come to know how many labels have promoted how many artists and how many of them are still in the dark. Things like that. You just over time, because I'm also in touch with the side of the world that actually exists with artists and the
Yeah.
artists' daily struggle versus how that is seen and how that portrayal or the implementation of a trend wants to go through with through labels and companies like ones that distribute and promote music as well as ones that are trying to build artists and like create music or labels for that matter. So yeah, it's been a lot of getting fresher insights and understanding the nuances of the industry overall from your streaming to your live entertainment.
Right. I have to ask you this, Pratika, because I was watching Kalbari Records, for which you have done two tracks. One you have written and one you have performed. Uh, while it is, considerably, while Gully Boy, I feel to a certain extent scratched the surface. I think Khalbali Records at least goes further. It does a deep dive into the workings of the music industry. But still, while I progressed through at least 3 episodes, I am yet to finish the other. I get this understanding that deep dive is not really deep enough. Like there is still, a lot of information that is just like, cherry picked, and there's a lot that's been, gate kept. So where do you, even as a cinegoer yourself, when you see stories or narratives about the music industry being shown on screen, how do you gauge the difference between authenticity and safeguarding, industry secrets?
Wow, that's a really nice question. Um, I think so. I haven't watched the show in its entirety yet, because I'm just like, in between a few things. I haven't got into it. I do know the moments for which I was writing songs, which were kind of focused around very important moments in the show also. Uh,
Mm.
I think at the end of the day, while they have picked on a few of the very integral issues and things that do happen on a frequent basis in the industry, there's also that writing for entertainment kind of side that has to be kept in the show for the balance of it. And I don't think anyone so far has gone deep enough to like reveal the actual gutter of things. There's always a, like you were saying, like a gatekeeping, in a sense. There is one level to which you get while you're trying to create something, but then you won't go to the full extent. I don't know what it is for. I think most of the reasons people hold back on anything is out of fear, or most reason that people do anything is out of fear. So uh, I just feel like they wanted to combine some of the ideas that they've taken from real life instances and kind of give it that entertainment spin, because at the same time it needs to just be a solid story also. So it will not go to the depth. Some things will be even exaggerated probably. I'm going to watch the show and I'll probably have a better conversation with you about it next week. But yeah, I think some things are explained to the full extreme. Some things are extremely masalofied and like chutneyfied because it just makes for better entertainment. And some things are
It's
kept away
drama,
from
in
because,
short.
yeah, it's drama. It's all drama at the end of the day. And some things are, I think, are completely refrained from out of fear or lack of the full understanding of that particular situation, or like too much mystery behind it or too much gadbad behind it to include something like that. Now in the show, I don't know specifically if there's some. I know what you're saying by generally when we watch shows about any kind of industry, people are always holding back in some aspect. Like they don't give like a 100% of what it is.
Yeah.
And I just basically think that that's out of fear. There's a lot of bigger hands and things at play in
Yeah.
general when you're trying to create something and even display it through art, because you could really be scrutinized for things that might touch the wrong nerves, as you might say. So yeah, I don't know
So,
how you can keep a balance really.
so let me add to this question also, because for a lot of those purist cinephiles, I was also one among that till very recently, till I had a shift in perspective. First of all, perspective is really a beautiful word.
Perspective nowadays is subjective.
So perspective is nowadays subjective, but I really love these two words, perspective and objective. I think I swallowed a dictionary this morning for breakfast. But just to flip the question, Pratika, but the point where I'm trying to get at is like for a lot of people out there, especially consumers of pop culture who have a very purist attitude towards narratives. For them, like either it's black or either it's white. Like, some of us still have trouble trying to figure out our existence in the gray. In such a scenario, how does one uh, bring themselves to also give the benefit of doubt to makers or to artists. Like I'm combining film and music here because you've
Yeah.
been a fair part of both. How does one give artists that benefit to, okay, yeah, fine, this you're operating over here. This is how much you disclose. This is how much you hold back. And while still trying to make sense of the fact that, okay, it is we're very conveniently we are given disclaimers that this is not an accurate uh portrayal, or this is not an accurate retelling
It's
of
not of
what
real
is
life
happening.
decisions
Yeah,
or real life incidents.
this is not based on real incidents, but you can very clearly see where the digs are taken. You can clearly tell who is you can always count the Easter eggs actually enough in a
Yeah.
presentation. So where do you think is that sweet spot, or how is that really found?
I think that people go with the portrayal of what is most typical in
Hmm.
such instances or scenarios, or even while writing a story like this. Like, even when we get briefs for songs that are very specific moments or very specific things within shows or movies or things like that, there's an emotional extent which you have to explore. Like, ऐसे ऐसे टाइप की चीजें तुम उसमें डाल सकते हो, बट एट द सेम टाइम ऐसे नहीं लगना चाहिए कि ऐसे बोल रहे हो तुम. There is a, it's because it's very tightly knit with what is happening with the story. So there is a boundary. I think the boundary might start when the final story only is put together, because that is the piece that kind of dictates and narrates everything that happens on the way. And honestly, most of it, even with if you watch Showtime also, it
Yeah.
is like, while you can tell how real it is and you can name the studios around that whole thing, it's just ki sabse typical masaledar story hai ye at the end of the day.
Yeah.
While also steering clear of not making it sound like you're targeting the same thing, it is narrated in a sense where it seems like the most likely or the most generic or typical way of portraying something. That's how entertainment is largely put forth in front of the world, out of fear of not touching the wrong nerves of people. So I just think it's just that, safely to say.
Like you mentioned, Pratika, that you started off, as part of a metal act, and then, over the years, given your understanding of the working, in the music and event industry over the years, over 15 years, like you mentioned, you gradually transition to hip hop. While you do, sometimes, you team up with your brother, also a sound engineer, and a very respected one at that, Pritesh Prabhune, and both of you do, so somewhat infuse hip hop and metal together sometimes, as a duo. But how do you explain that shift? Because that shift also from metal to hip hop, while it seems gradual, it had would have involved a lot of learning and unlearning for you as an artist, because when you are performing under one genre, you sort of become accustomed, you sort of train and frame your artistry around that setup, and then you
Yeah.
see yourself making the transition to another genre and a completely different culture, and it's the influences, the whole cultural impact of, if you have to just look at metal and hip hop only as two separate entities, are very diverse. But how was that process for you as an artist?
I love this question. This is so many people ask it to me in so many different ways, but they actually just mean, like, how did you transition from metal to hip hop? Like, how did that happen over time? Uh, I How much ever I try nowadays, I just can't shake the metal off me. And I don't try to do it intentionally or something, but even if I listen to so much other music, I just cannot shake the metal off me. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a part of me. It's like we were melded at a very young age and now we have just like grown together. Um, the reason, so I used to listen to a lot of new metal, which is a subgenre of metal that is full of like it's about groove, and it has various vocal styles ranging from rap to like shouty stuff or even growls and the other aspects of metal that come into it. Um, the one relation I found, the relatability happened when I realized that lyrically, metal and hip hop had a lot in common in terms of
Mm.
rebellion, in terms of anti-establishment, in terms of societal, political, economic problems. Like I had no idea that early 80s and like late 80s and 90s hip hop was so much about reformation, about revolution, about, and this is only after kind of digging deeper into hip hop do you realize that the foundation of the genre was actually a very conscious driven genre of music. And so has metal been. It's just that with metal you don't understand much of it because a lot of people aren't accustomed to growls, which is kind of the same thing with hip hop. A lot of people, when people don't listen to enough rap, they're unable to decipher what someone's saying. But for a rap listener, listening to hip hop music is very easy. So it was just a matter of, I've always loved both the genres since I was growing up. Hip hop was something I was exposed to on television, and that kind of started off with Eminem and 50 Cent and whatever MTV was really bumping at the time. So, um, it kind of also there were a lot of artists at that time and now that were kind of working with each other. Like you'd see Snoop Dogg
Mm.
and Eminem in a in a Limp Bizkit video, and then you'd see like Limp Bizkit's vocalist Fred Durst in a Korn song or a video, and then you'd see like Ice-T in a song with Korn, and it was like there was a lot of even those bands at that time like Limp Bizkit and Korn were kind of so involved because they had that very groovy thing happening. It was very conducive for rappers to do stuff on. Um, so there was that culture that was also happening, which is a kind of rare strain of the mix of hip hop and new metal and where it blended. And I guess I'm one of those fans who kind of grew into that branch of loving both and at the same time saw where both met and loved that combination. So, like, if you listen to songs like Children of the Corn, which features, it's a Corn song which features Ice Cube. Yeah. And there are other two, three songs like that. You'll just see Snoop Dogg randomly on something. You'll see this guy that side. See people blending in each other's videos. So my brother and I have always been like a follower of that strain of hip hop and new metal that kind of came out.
That
Um,
marriage,
yeah, that marriage was like our spot. I was like, wow, I
inter-genre
love
marriage, if
wearing,
we can call
yeah, I
that.
love wearing like baggy pants and really baggy clothes and going and screaming on stage. That combination was, there's a very specific spot somewhere in that like 90s American culture that kind of sunk in and really stuck with us. Another thing about hip hop is through all of these things, the clarity of words and putting the message across became something that was more likely to get people to actually vibe and deal with the message. Like it's easier for listeners in a genre like rap versus doing the same thing in a genre like new metal. Like in terms of if you are really in the mood to spread a message and you really want to get it across to more people, rap is one of those mediums now that has made that so much easier because rhythm and poetry is just so simple to put across to people. Metalheads have been doing the same thing for the past 40, 50 years, and there are a lot of bands nowadays that do have rap in like heavier genres also. So yeah, I think it's that marriage that kind of made hip hop just one of those things that I naturally eased into. It was like if I'd hear like a trap beat or a dubstep beat, it was just like listening to something from Korn or any of those, yeah, like Skrillex Korn collaboration, like things like that. Korn has just always been one of those bands for me that has met those two sides, new metal and hip hop. So yeah, I think it happened very naturally. I've not ever explained this new metal marriage story to anybody before, so exclusive.
We. Oh, I think I'll take a small pat on the back that I asked a question different from the others.
Yeah. Because yeah, a lot of people try to get this question, but then it doesn't. It doesn't translate this way. The answer.
Well, Pratika, like you I think in that question, you also in my previous question, you also pretty much answered who your influences actually are. But I think where apart from always asking people to cherry pick their influences, I think what I also want to understand over here, and because I know I can have this conversation with you, how did listening to Korn or the artists that you mentioned, how did that shape your thinking and your flow of thought as an artist? Because like you very rightfully mentioned, metal and hip hop artists have always since inception they have always been people who have pushed dialogue through their music. So
100%.
how has listening to as an impressionable child, how has listening helped you create that thinking?
Yeah, and it's been out of like a lot of listening, lot of listening. Artists that actually really struck a chord with me would be Korn and Lamb of God on two fronts. Korn because again, it's the environment you grew up in and your circumstances that also make you relate to a certain kind of sound or a certain message that someone's putting through. Korn was there for me at a time where I was just another kid. Uh, at a time where in real life, having straight hair was so happening because of all the hair ads and the Sunsilk and this and that, but I had curly hair. So, can you imagine being bullied for having curly hair? Like people used to make fun of the fact that I had curls and like one curl sometimes used to stand up from here above my hairband. I used to be made fun of for the most stupid shit. And a lot of Korn's music was anti-bullying. A lot of their initiatives, even today in life, are just to help younger kids, to help delinquents, to help really bullied kids, come out of it or just, help them with therapy and like things like that. And mental health struck me at that time. Like understanding ki, why do I feel this way? And what are people doing to not make people feel this way? Or how do you overcome things like this? How do you get out? Korn was in that aspect very close to me as an artist that related to me in the mental health sense, and they were also fun. Like there are a lot of fun songs also just for the fun of it. Lamb of God, on the other hand, was something that was speaking more of my global perspective. Like it brought up a lot of what's happening in the world today. What is like global politics is destroying people, and like other smaller things on discrimination and things that just come out so beautifully. Even the darkness and the light inside you, how it just shines through, and how your presence in the world. I mean, I don't think anyone really thinks so deeply about lyrics to like come up with how this has shaped them as an individual, but all of those things collectively have had an impact on how I am to other people, on how I see the world, on the things that I have felt really petrified of, that I have had the heart and the courage to share so that other people who relate to it know that they're not alone in a world like this. It has shaped my entire personality. Like it has just changed how I view the world. Like everything is not masti mazak, everything is not fun and hussy. Like while I really lean towards those side of things because in general everyone wants to be happier people, there are these parts of life and these aspects that really need to be spoken about through more than just news and mediums that actually have an impact and make a difference and can be a frequency that is spread through to way more people than just reading it in a newspaper one morning, or just trying to deal with family without understanding what real issues are, what trauma is to somebody. Like you don't just read about that. When you hear someone narrating those stories through a medium and kind of coloring it and giving it so much of impetus to the message, it is way more impactful. I just feel like music is one of those things. Even if I feel like music can affect you to the extent, and that's the extent that I'm kind of trying to work towards, is even if you don't understand what I'm saying now, by just hearing the way I'm delivering it, along with the way the music is composed to balance both those factors, that should make you feel it. You don't need to understand what I'm saying. You just hear and you're like, oh, when I'm listening to this, I feel like this, I feel like that. Like that is the ultimate goal that music, I think, serves for a lot of people, is just by listening to something said either oh so beautifully and with so much softness and depth, all the way to hearing something that is said in so much anger and in so much expression that just by listening to it तुम्हारे रोंगटे खड़े हो जाए. You don't need to know exactly what the fuck's happening. I think that's how metal hit me the first time. And then I went and heard the lyrics and I'm like, yo, ये तो क्या क्या बोल रहा है भाई एक गाने में. इसने तो पूरा रामायण निकाल दिया है. इंडस्ट्री और पॉलिटिक्स की तो मार दी है full. But first, the first thing that hit me was the impact of the music. So I think even songwriters and their whole journey that kind of surmounts to this moment of when they start creating and releasing music, the impact of it is how they have been changed by the music and the world around them to shape and make this person that can put this message across to you today.
You spoke about this inter-genre marriage. I mean, I'm being trivial here right now by speaking about how influences from metal and hip hop have very beautifully merged into your musicality, something that was reflected in the very collab, the rap rock collab that you did with your brother Prabhu Ne. First of all, congratulations on that, because it has a great video that Chinmay Patkar has designed for you guys. And I think the way you have spat verses in that song, I think that pretty much makes up for what you have been listening to all your life, and somehow you set out to project and you achieved results with it. So how do you look at somewhere pushing dialogue at one end, but also pushing the prospects of a genre that's not particularly explored much in India, this marriage, this convergence of metal and hip hop?
Yeah. I think it's kind of a natural evolution as a musician also. Like over time, when you have been listening to so much stuff and you have been soaking in so many influences, it also comes from a place where it's time to do something different, combined with it's time to just create what I feel like creating. I don't want to be just hopping onto a trend or a genre for the sake of it. It's at that time and place and moment where it happens naturally. So doing that and still keeping in mind the fact that I want to put a message across is where I developed a way in doing that, as well as using one medium, which is rap, which is a more understandable and more now a more global medium. So it wasn't an effort as such that I put into doing it. It's just something that came out naturally out of listening to so much stuff. Like how some people just get a grasp of rhythm after they've heard enough percussion, or if they've studied Konakol, or if they do things that are more exploratory of that form. It's just easier for you to be able to create something new out of it because you meld all the good things or all the aspects that are worth staying with the genre. So
Right.
yeah, I just think it's like a very natural evolution for me. There was not much thought into it, but I did keep in mind the thought of making sure what I'm saying is understood. So that the keeping the larger message in mind, but still creatively doing what I thought was necessary. I mean, I can, for the sake of manufacturing, just make fast raps on trap songs because that's what sounds the best in my voice and gives a full show off of my abilities. Or like really sick fast rap on some DNB song and all. Yeah, theek hai, I can do all those things. But the point is it just because I can do it that I'm doing it? Or is it that I want to put a message across as a musician, or I want to just evolve and create from the, like I was telling you earlier, from the very base of it, create the music and make the music emote that kind of feeling, which now with the stuff that is coming up, our new music and stuff is going to be very it's something you've never heard before. The worlds that we are marrying with. Also, again, another exclusive. Pritish and I are almost done with an album. We wrote, actually, I'm the one who's dragging this because I have some lyrics left to kind of put together. But
You're doing patchwork.
yeah, a little here and there because I'm like, I also don't want to just write it for the sake of writing it. It's a very elaborate concept album. It's the marriage of all of those things. It's taking a message plus taking how the world is today, taking sarcasm, taking power, greed, taking how much we always feel and want to fend for ourselves over everyone else when we see danger or we feel insecure, how everything becomes about protecting the self, how the ego has become like, the face of the human being. There's a lot of like, so that's what, like, taking all those things, I've decided that this was just the right thing to do, and the music kind of accompanies what I'm saying. So that is
Yeah.
why it evolved the way it did.
Because you spoke about, you don't want to be an artist who hops onto trends, because that's what is being spoken about. It brings me to a point in time where I remember Pratika, when in my professional capacity, when I was taking interviews while representing a publication, unlike unlike doing it independently now. I remember the last time you, rapper Kranti Nari, Ashwini Hiremat, for those who are, for who aren't aware. The last time you, Kranti Nari, and I, we sat down and we had a conversation. We spoke largely about how rappers who started out by rapping about who's their earlier works were anti-establishment, or it was against their circumstances, and gradually when fame followed and when fame fell in their lap, uh, they went back to pretty much doing the same things what established mainstream commercial rappers are doing, whereas the women were largely left to speak about issues that they face on a daily basis. I need to understand from you that how does the responsibility of pushing dialogue always lie with the artist? Is that a responsibility that artists should bear? That is a that expect keeping that expectation. That's one. On the other hand, is it easy to actually crucify artists for saying that, hey, you're just hopping onto a trend because, or you're just hopping on to a, I mean, since when have we trivialized issues as trends, firstly?
Yeah.
I mean, if a piece of art is talking about women's safety, acha, okay, women's safety is now, uski, like they say in Hindi, no, uski hawa bahut chal rahi hai, abhi to theek hai, wo women safety पे रैप करेगा. अगर वो अनफेयर अपॉर्चुनिटीज की बात हो रही है, अच्छा अभी हम अनफेयर अपॉर्चुनिटीज पे गाना निकालेंगे. How are these generalizations just made, and how does an artist in such a scenario where opinions now are opinions backed without any evidence, without anything substantial, without any statistics also sometimes, but it's just opinions made out of thin air that are now dictating trends, that are now dictating perceptions and so many other things. How does an artist operate in such an environment?
That's actually a very heavy one. Um, Firstly, I don't think there's any problem with artists hopping onto trends because in the day and age of today's digital world, the only way visible impact is seen or many changes come about are when issues have started becoming trends. Like uh, so much pressure on the internet towards particular causes, besides even physically standing there. Like imagine during the RG Kaur rape case, for example. There are people who are there out on the streets of Kolkata who can be there, but then there were millions of other people online who are creating the same pressure about the same incident. So when the incident started trending is when it actually got more attention in the eyes of the country as well as probably triggered a lot of people internally in the government and this and that. People like there is an extent, and you can see even through the case and the small here discrepancies here and there, how none of it would have ever surfaced or none of it would have seen so much quick action, even though it's
Hmm.
taken fucking 2 months. No one would have seen any kind of progress in that case if there wasn't that much pressure. So sometimes when issues become trending things on the internet, they can actually be useful. Uh, a lot of people wouldn't know about a lot of things happening in Gaza or in Ukraine or anything if it weren't for the internet. And just like using the internet in general brings a lot of things to the fore. So I don't have a problem with artists hopping onto trends. I don't have a problem with issues becoming trends. But the problem is where what happens to trends and the shelf life of trends. That is the actual problem. बिकॉज आजकल हर चीज 10 दिन के बाद सब लोग भूल जाते हैं किसी को याद नहीं रहता है 10 दिन पहले क्या हुआ समथिंग एज serious as as a rape case or a bombing in Gaza can just like disappear in thin air because of the shelf life and how fragile it is to just back something that is only there for the purpose of a trend. The trend does good when it exists for whatever little shelf life it has. But longevity of that particular issue, it becomes trivial. You know, it will not retain its amount of seriousness. Later it'll be like, अरे ये trend वापस आ गया. You know, और एक rape होने के बाद हाँ चलो दूसरे rape के बारे में बात करते हैं. ओ तीसरा rape हो गया चलो women safety सब लोग बोलो women safety साथ में बोलो से women safety. Like it becomes that. That is the sad and sasta side of it. In terms of artists and the way they used to write and how that has changed and evolved over time, I think from what I have observed, I don't know, this particular thing is opinion. Now that we are speaking of opinions also, I feel like a lot of an artist writing, just because I've seen that reflection in myself. Uh, your writing changes based on your life and your lifestyle and how you grow as an artist and what turns your life takes out of music, because a lot of the things that we write about are out of emotions of things that happen in our real life. So if in our real life we are now so much happier and so much more out of shit, we feel like celebrating that also. But now again, in this very same answer is the difference between how men can afford to celebrate that versus how women don't always celebrate that. And that's because the very simple reason is because the issues that women are talking about are still unresolved. So there's a huge difference between just smiling and being happy now in life because you're going to move on and you know you're rich and like yeah money huh like everything happens to you great. We're not past women's issues. Yeah, see, I also work on a team that programs for a festival. I understand that all music that is programmed at festivals is not going to be by looking at लड़का है कि लड़की है और कितने लड़कियां और कितने लड़की है. You know, nothing is programmed like that. In all honesty, you can't. It's about the mood and the vibe of that particular stage. If you're very sure about one artist, then what are the other things that you're programming on that stage that need to fit the mood and the vibe of it? I totally get it. I've also been programming and working at festivals for years. It's just that I wonder how Control Alt Delete is the only festival that manages to strike a much better balance, even in this aspect, than most other festivals. How can it be the only festival that can have like, you know, 31, 35, whatever, between like 20 to 30, 40% of women in like the overall lineup or any other representation? Like, is it like that scarce, or are there like such few female musicians across so many genres that you are absolutely unable to find anybody to program in the right slots? Like, so that's the thing, right? These smaller issues, these women's issues. The other day I was really pissed off. I'm like, I'm looking at some, I forgot what that festival was called. It's organized by these guys called Banger or something from Chandigarh.
I got it.
सिर्फ
I
आदमी
know which one
लोग
you're
यार,
about.
सिर्फ आदमी लोग. How is that? Are you telling me there is nobody, even in your immediate surrounding? तुम्हारे शहर में acts ही है यार. You're telling me there's nobody, no woman who is deserving or fit or within those genres that you are trying to program. It's impossible. It beats me. Like sometimes I'm just like, खुद ही कुछ चालू करना पड़ेगा भाई. ये feeling को हटाने के लिए मुझे ही कुछ करना पड़ेगा, ऐसा लगता है कभी-कभी. Because so that's what, like the way even artists that would evolve. I'm just saying this from like a rapper's perspective and being a female rapper. The way a lifestyle for a male rapper would evolve and the thematic turns and things that their life would take compared to a woman not ever getting past those issues is because those issues remain unresolved. That's like a large part of the main issue. So yeah, I hope in parts I answered that question, breaking it down one by one.
You did not even break it down. You actually, I was going to definitely ask ask the question about representation of women and queer individuals at and or
Yeah.
queer acts at music festivals. But what I think I must ask this question because I have always had this somewhere at the back of my mind whenever I watch festival lineups, especially in the latter half of a year when these acts start getting decided between October to March. What I need to understand, Pratika, also is a lot of times in the name of representation, the critics especially who are, I would say critics, that's a very strong term, but I would just say this, let's say the cynics, for the lack of a better word, the ones who might argue that representation is great, but can acts be programmed strictly on the basis of who is bringing in the business or the merit of or the merit that lies in the music? But again, I know I would want to counter it saying that who gets to decide merit? Merit is a very subjective term. Who gets to decide what gratifies as merit or not? And sorry, I don't think so. In a day and age where mediocrity is thriving, does merit even? I, in my humble opinion, I know that merit is a myth in the day and age of mediocrity.
Yeah.
I want to understand is for women especially, or for people who do not have the access to the people to the power corridors that are actually handling these events, or to the people who are putting up these acts, what are the options of access? Because you and I, or a lot of people who are aware about the inside workings of the industry, understand that a lot of this is pulled off by access, and that's the truth.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So the ones who decide, I was just thinking of saying it before, but good you ask the question so I can say pertaining it to it. When I was also looking at that lineup, and I'm telling you, this is related to access because it's the people who decide, right? Who goes in, who gets out, who becomes a popular act. Have you noticed how, in my mind, right now, while looking at all the festival posters, I cannot see one big act like Lisa Mishra. And why is there only one Lisa Mishra? But there are 5 Raftars, there are 6 some fucking else. There's only one Lisa Mishra, and there are no other big female headliners. Like how is that even possible? Are you telling me there are lesser women who make music? Or are you telling me there are lesser talented women who make music? Because I can really argue that. It starts from there, I feel. The way that artists on labels are, I wouldn't say like manufacture makes it feel too artificial, because I do believe that these artists also have some sort of self-worth and value that they add to the whole process. But in the making of these artists that are breaking out like this here and there, or who are topping charts, or who their labels are pushing and making like stars out of, where are the women, man? Like, have you in general just look around in festival lineups or anything? Where are the women? Like, can you recognize more? I can't. I right now, besides Lisa Mishra and maybe like Jasmine Sandlas comes to my mind, which I didn't even know her before all about music. Like who are the women headliners? Where are those people only? I don't think there has been a space to even create women headliners enough. Because I'm just talking about the way that everything is fabricated, and if we are deciding that this guy has this good music and we're gonna this is totally gonna blow up because we're gonna put this marketing and this and that behind it. The resources you're deploying to make that person's thing also a success, are we doing enough of that for women is a big question. Like it feels like sometimes when if you go to like a label's office or something like that and you sit around, you will see that there's a sufficient amount of female artists and this and that, but ऐसा उन लोग क्यों break नहीं हो रहे यार? Like why aren't they going at that level of break? Like playing all the festivals and this and that, and hopping on, performing in front of small clubs as well as like massive stadiums and all. ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा है लड़कियों के साथ? And I think a lot behind that only, see, independently हम लोग धीरे धीरे कर लेंगे ब्रो, सब खुद से करना ही पड़ेगा वैसे भी, और कर ही रहे, इतने सालों से खुद से ही कर रहे हैं सब, कोई मदद नहीं करता है. But there has to be some, I don't know man, I really feel like this is one of the main problems. And I think it's also the audience, because there is this very weird air of, as much as you say no, it's not there, not all men, patriarchy is reduced, we will protect you, we don't want protection bro, we want safety. And like just in the whole guise of, there is this air of patriarchy that just as a listener also I feel so dirty sometimes, that I feel like people who are listening are making a bias knowing that it's a guy or a girl. I don't know why I feel like that, because maybe it's just me and I'm just like too deep into fighting about it online all the time, or just supporting so many women musicians that I feel like somewhere yeah, it's just me. But there is this weird air of, I think people don't give the same bhav as an audience or listeners to the female artists the way they do to guys. Like, अरे fuck उसका गाना कितना cool है यार, ये वो सब लोग आके बोलेंगे, लेकिन मैंने rarely, I mean, I know women and including myself, fuck it, I'm saying it out loud. I know I'm better than so many others who are making shit out there, but it's the guys who get the support. It's it's I don't know. It's sad. Like I released this song some time back in collaboration, and the other artist in fact asked me ki everyone on this song is literally just coming and praising the guys in the song, while there are equal or more number of girls in the song. Everyone's just coming to shout out to the guys in the comment section. I'll show you this. And हम लोग ने फाड़ा है वो गाने में verses. We have written really fucking good shit. But still, the most basic motherfucker will get the bhav. I don't know what it is. It's like a very deep-rooted, inherent patriarchal thing that as a listener only, you will not let a woman thrive. As a listener also. Or ये है, I really feel like it's not only me. Sometimes I feel like it's only me because I'm
It is
a very
there.
angry woman. But
It is
it's not
there.
only me.
It no, it is there, and I'm glad you say that. I mean, I'm not being some sort of jury, judge, hangman kind of a person here, and
Of course
actually
not.
affirming this. But yes, it is there. I think across mediums we have spoken about it. Across this is not Chinese whispers or something.
Yeah.
When I say mediocrity thrives, it is that it is this very basic. I just feel that the audience is very quick to absolve the men of mediocrity, and they even celebrate it.
Also, yeah.
But when it comes to women, whether it's in films or whether it's in
अरे
music,
women का तो अगर वो, even if
they
a
will
woman
have to
is a
perform.
musician, they'll see how badly she's worn clothes. Like that. That is the crux of it. It's so sad.
It's all like the like merit goes for a toss, but the minute she is dressed or presented in a particular way, then yeah, then I'm interested in listening to your music. I have seen this even with singer-songwriters also. If there is enough depth and meaning in what you know a musician is writing and performing, there is no audience to it unless and until she dresses up in a certain way. And no, we are not being prudes about it, or we are not being this is not on the artist in any way, but that is a mentality. Okay, she is dressed up a certain way, she is presenting and projecting in a certain way, great,
I was
now I'm
just going to use
interested.
this word. I was just going to use this word. There is such a fine line between getting a woman to dress up for an occasion versus
Yeah.
behaving presentable. There is a difference there also. And people make it sound like it's one thing. से रैपर्स कुछ भी कपड़ा पहन के चढ़ जाते हैं भाई स्टेज पे, कुछ भी ना ढंग का, like shabbily dressed, beards, horrible, like whatever, like not the definition or representation of presentable, because it doesn't even matter, you know. Oh, it's about how he has adorned this personality of not giving fucks and this and that. Try a woman doing the same thing, she'll be shamed for it. Like
Yeah.
our mentality only is such ki it doesn't stop only at the music. Na, the bias is very inherent and it's
It
very
is very inherent,
deep rooted
yes.
in our like system only. Our family ke system mein hai itna deep rooted, that bias. It's like it's so deep rooted you can't see it. It's not tangible. It's just something that appears every time something actually happens, or whenever issues like this happen. It's horrible. Or when people have to listen to music, basically.
Because we spoke about festival lineups and everything, I think it also is paramount that we address that how you and Kranti Nari have created this beautiful collective called Wild Wild Women, with Preeti Sutar, who is hashtag Preeti, for those who do not know. There is Shruti Raut, who is MC Mahila, and there is Jacqueline Lucas, who is J Queen. And I love these titles, by the way, these monikers that each one of you have adopted. But as Wild Wild Women also, I see that you have, sorry, let me phrase that again. As Wild Wild Women, you all have performed at the NH7 Weekender, and recently you also did a show with Mad Boy Mink and I think Don Raj, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
While Wild Wild Women, from the just from a very outsider's lens, is performing, or one would say is getting the opportunities to be presented, and there is an audience that's coming to watch them. Do you think it's just to sometimes okay, they are asking for it, let's just oblige them with visibility, and that's it, we are done, the creds are taken care of? Does that feeling that does that thought ever strike you?
So, I think the basis of forming Wild Wild Women for hashtag Preeti and Kranti Nari, they're the ones who kind of called everybody together.
Yeah.
I think the whole basis was also out of just seeing the lack of women on stage in general and the lack of women being bold about themselves and as rappers in the hip hop industry, which is like extremely male dominated. Uh, I also feel like a lot of times, like while I am a part of Wild Wild Women, I enjoyed every performance and everything that has ever happened. I also feel like it's one of those things that worked at festivals and stuff because there's 5 women on stage together doing something very powerful. So it has to be such an extreme novelty for people to just willingly accept and program it more and all. Like if it was just one of us or two of us, we still don't get programmed the way Wild Wild Women does. It takes 5 women to get programmed as a women act. I'm just saying. A minimum of 5 women on stage. No, I mean, of course, there are
I would disagree to that. I mean, I don't think so. The number of women in an act, there are duos and trios also who
Yeah,
are
yeah, for
pretty
sure.
much there on.
There are some amazing women who are doing great music, who have entire acts to back them, and they've like created and
Yeah.
are at the fore of it all. But I just feel like there is so much more excitement that people saw with Wild Wild Women because there were 5 people on stage. Like,
Right.
and it's very, it is honestly being a part of the act also, it's very empowering. Like to be on a stage like that and 5 girls who share those thoughts, exchanging that, throwing bars at the crowd, doing things. It is very, like, it's a very amazing and powerful thing.
Yeah.
But somewhere that's what I don't see other female rappers who are like, who've got any sort of little, push extra. Maybe like I feel Rebel is a super talented human being. She deserves all of it. uh I really like, I know these women also as people. Rebel, Irfana, D, Siri. I don't know. I'm not sure where Siri is right now, but what insane rappers, man. Like, and uh they're good artists and good people also. Like, and that goes so long in their journey. But then again, I see only them. And it's not possible that there are just, some of these, they're albeit talented, very talented, but there are so many rappers, dude. There are so many women that so many people just have no idea about.
For our listeners, who are largely listening to the men when it comes to Indian hip hop, I want you to pick up the women that we must, whose music we must dig into.
Okay. Um, we must listen to. Should I leave this specifically like to some of the rappers, or should I like mix it up a little bit?
Your
What do you think?
choice. Your choice.
Okay, I'll tell you about some of the really cool rappers from across the country. I want to just highlight some women who have been doing cool things, but I don't know how much people are looking or know about what they're doing. One is Kranti Nari for sure. There is no one in the line of women rappers or even like women activists right now in within music that are actually doing something that cater to plausible change. Like, she's taking the effort of creating a bus that is going to go and record songs and tales from the Kumaoni region in Uttarakhand, which is a dying culture and language right now. And she has gone there to explore it once, live with the people before she actually goes and does that. That is a historical and musical preservation that it's a very true effort. And she's a rapper who writes along those lines of strength and empowerment, and all of the things that are going wrong in the country, our economic and societal political situations, it's all there. So Kranti Nari, definitely. Also, so glad she's my crewmate and a very good friend. Agsy, there are very few rappers who can rap with the skill and the playfulness and the talent of Agsy. She is definitely a force to be reckoned with in the huge sausage fest, which is the north of India. And she deserves, I'm sorry, but she deserves way more than most people are willing to give. Uh, Rebel and Meba Ophelia, two incredible artists from the northeast of India, two diverse, using their own language while using English so fluently and with such ease. Neba sings also a lot more than Rebel, but they're both just
A good
insanely
songwriter
talented,
also.
insanely talented women. There is Mahi, who is between like Mumbai and Pune. Mahi is a Marathi conscious rapper again, very beautiful, very empowered human being and spirit overall. Wants to do good, wants to do better things. I just think she needs to be heard more. There's
Stop,
Desire, who is
stop.
from.
I'm sorry.
Less
You have to
than a minute.
carry.
But yeah, last was Desire from Jamshedpur. She's a battle rapper who is actually very good at like going, very good with like wordplay and everything. And she's a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, please go and give these women a listen.
For those who have survived so far at the end of this really, really wonderful conversation, and yeah, that's the lack of a better word. This is not just wonderful, this is an extensive conversation, but I know that it is also a very, very necessary conversation. And Pratika, I'm more than thankful to you for being a contributor to this conversation. Thank you for taking out the time and speaking to me on VJ's playlist. I know that the power of your thought and the power of your voice will take you much far and beyond than any of us can comprehend. So I wish you all the very best and thank you once again for speaking to me.
Thank you so much, and thank you for trying to purge and bring out real, legitimate discussions about the music industry in general through these interviews, because there are fewer people who do that again, out of the fact that everything is so tailored, or reporting is so controlled or construed by the various things in society that obstruct us from being our true selves and expressing absolute journalistic freedom. So thank you for that, because that is something that really resonates with me. While obviously all of us somewhere or the other fear a little bit of how much we say and how much is okay is enough. It takes big steps and a lot of guts to put together stuff like this. So thank you for doing this, and please continue doing this.
And I will. Thank you. Thank you so much.